Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup, a one-stop shop for all news West Asia. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I am the head of news for the Cradle. I'm joined by my colleagues, content creator and social media manager for the Cradle, Sima Itayin, and writer and content creator for the Cradle, Karim Shami. And before we start, we just want to remind you to like, to share, to subscribe, to tell your friends, tell your family about our podcast and about the Cradle, and to check our Patreon, where you can support our work and help us continue doing what we do. Let's start with a discussion on what's been happening in the Gaza Strip, particularly in the north, especially in the aftermath of a Knesset vote, the Israeli parliament, that overwhelmingly approved two laws to essentially ban the activities of the UN refugee agencies for Palestinians, also known as UNRWA, in what is being described as a catastrophic move, essentially ending humanitarian services for Palestinians across the Strip, or at the very least, the main provider of humanitarian services. Specifically in the north as well, where we're seeing the Holocaust, the Zionist final solution, really intensified over the past several weeks, to the point that the Gaza Civil Defense a few days ago ended all activities there and left tens of thousands of Palestinians abandoned, not by choice, obviously, but by design, as Israel continues to implement the so-called general's plan to ethnically cleanse the Strip in hopes of resettling it. So the vote against UNRWA, we've seen for the past year that Israel has been trying incessantly to discredit, to defund UNRWA, with a smear campaign, with claiming that UN employees are actually Hamas members, claiming that some UNRWA employees took part in the October 7 attack, achieving the defunding of UNRWA by a number of countries, and now essentially outlawing it completely. So not just in Gaza being targeted anymore, but also across the occupied Palestinian territories in the West Bank, occupied East Jerusalem. And, so what are the repercussions of such a move, and what can we expect to come next?
Well, about UNRWA specifically is that now this move, not just in light of North Gaza, but in general, this is not just about depriving Palestinian refugees of services or starving them, essentially. And as you said, they've been doing this by trying to say that, terrorists work in UNRWA. It goes beyond the humanitarian dimension. There is a sinister political dimension that goes hand in hand with the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, and that is that Israel wants to dismantle UNRWA because it transmits refugee status from generation to generation. And this keeps the right of return for Palestinian refugees alive. So that it keeps their hopes alive, their hopes for returning to their ancestral homeland. The 1948 refugees and their descendants. So, they want to eradicate that. They want to liquidate the Palestinian cause and eliminate their national aspirations. So before we talk about, the crisis in North Gaza only, this falls into what Israel is trying to do, which is annex the West Bank and absorb it all. So this, again, as you mentioned, doesn't just stop at Gaza. This is, in his remarks a few days ago, the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, he said that also basically essentially wants to annex the West Bank, expand settlements, repeating that, and that he wants to eradicate any nationalistic aspirations. He says those who are not able to put aside their national ambitions will receive assistance to be sent outside to immigrate to an Arab country or to Europe or I don't know where. And even Gideon Saar, who recently joined the coalition as a minister, said Israel must abandon and block anything based on concessions for a two-state solution. And so getting rid of UNRWA, although it's very dangerous, but the situation in North Gaza is dangerous regardless. We have no words anymore to describe what's happening there. They will replace UNRWA with something else that distributes aid, but it will not carry forward the refugee status from generation to generation, because UNRWA schools teach that they will one day go back to where they were kicked out from. And that is the most dangerous thing, in my opinion, other than the humanitarian aspect of it.
No, I think it's very interesting that you bring this up, Sima, because I feel this is not, obviously, in the mainstream media, is never going to really bring this up, this aspect of it, because, when we talk about ethnically cleansing Gaza or the Palestinian territories, we're not just talking about the murders. We're not just talking about starvation or the lack of humanitarian aid. We're also talking about history, as you're saying, right? Rewriting history and leaving Palestinians as literally people without a land, without a hope, without a future. And, as this is happening, as the Knesset votes on this, the attacks in the north of Gaza particularly, very intense over the past few hours, about 115 people killed in north of Gaza in Israeli airstrikes. Nevertheless, we're still seeing the Palestinian resistance active in Jabalia camp. So what is the latest of on the ground in Gaza? And because at this point, Israel, we're approaching the U.S. election, right? We're approaching it seems like Israel is almost intensifying a lot of its actions before the U.S. election. So I don't know what you guys have seen that is the latest coming from Adam.
Well, no, I mean, we talked about this last week briefly, but the reason why the Palestinians in North Gaza, which has been besieged for over 3 weeks now, not a drop of water or food or aid or anything, the reason why they're refusing to go south is there's more than one reason. They know, because they lived through the Nakba, they know that if they leave to go south, which is what the Israeli wants, they may never be allowed back to the north, because don't forget there's the Netzarim corridor that bisects the strip, and they fear that they won't be able to come back ever, actually, because they know that the Israeli plan is to empty out the north, whether that's to isolate the resistance or build settlements, as the hidden motive we've discussed before. So they're staying in the north, and they're risking being killed en masse, also as a support to the resistance, because they know that the Israeli wants to isolate the resistance and starve the resistance. And this is why the Israelis trying to get rid of all the Palestinians in North Gaza. Now, Anas al-Sharif, the Al Jazeera journalist in Gaza, who recently actually was accused of being either Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The Cradle covered this, but Israel recently came out and called claimed that it had documents showing that 5 journalists, Al Jazeera journalists, are either members of Hamas or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, similar, of course, to what they did with the allegations against UNRWA. But as we know, they have been targeting journalists relentlessly in Gaza, and this has led to over 180 journalists killed. So Anas al-Sharif, who is there now, along with a few other journalists, posted a tweet yesterday saying, what is happening, the scene now in northern Gaza, because, I'd rather amplify his voice because I'm not there. Burning schools and shelters, so setting them on fire, burning houses with families inside, destroying residential neighborhoods over the heads of children and women, blowing up entire residential blocks, artillery shelling of civilians, and shooting anyone who moves, siege, starvation, thirst, extermination, storming, and displacement. This is just in a nutshell, basically. And this is an undescribable scene. And as you mentioned, there are constant, because of the lack of civil defense and the lack of ambulance services, there are constant appeals from families for help, and there is no one to go help them. We don't know the number of those martyred anymore. Anyone who is arriving at Kamal Adwan Hospital, which was attacked and shelled, and whose staff was detained, and the patients were detained and killed, anyone who arrives at that hospital now dies from their wounds. Because also, on top of there being no civil defense and no ambulances, there is not enough medical equipment. And I'm sure you remember, they even attacked the oxygen station in the hospital. They killed the son of the director of the hospital. So where we are now is still this barbaric attempt to implement this general's plan, this Israeli general's plan, unofficially implementing, because Israel is still denying that to the world. And the people in the north are aware of that, and are trying to stay put because of that, regardless of the fact that buildings are collapsing over their heads and killing them.
They blew up the last working fire truck. The depravity really has no limits. And worth mentioning as well that this is happening, as I said, just a few days from the U.S. election, but also yesterday, South Africa presented about 750 pages of evidence of intent to genocide at the International Court of Justice, of genocidal acts. what is this website, Forensic Architecture, a few days ago came out with a report that it was almost 1,000 pages long, highlighting all of the cases in which Israel has violated the Genocide Convention among every other single, piece of international law. But there's no intent, right, to stop. There's no intent. There's no interest. There's no pressure. There's no, it really is happening under our noses. What we've been warning now for more than a year, and the Western world is just sitting on their hands. And most of the world, let's be honest, there's a very few group of people that are actually standing against what's happening, either in the legal sense and more, I guess, directly in the ground, right? Like organizations like Hezbollah or the other groups within the axis of resistance.
What we are seeing in northern Gaza is systematic destruction, and of course they already destroyed the infrastructure, and they are targeting, as we all know, hospitals from day one, and down in level they are hinting that they will start to target hospitals, and of course the schools, because these are like the main asset for any city in the world, is the education and the health body, and it's a systematic targeting. And maybe people are asking why northern Gaza, because northern Gaza is closer to Israel. In the south, of course, there's Egypt, they don't care. And near Gaza, there's two major cities in Israel, Ashkelon and Ashdod. And combined, they have population of around 350 to 400,000 people. And of course, we know that in Israel, and especially on the western coast, they have only two ports. One is in Ashdod and one is in Haifa. And of course, they want to create this buffer zone. Because in the future, if everything stops and Hamas stood on their legs again and they started to manufacture new weapons, they want like a buffer zone about 15 kilometers. So that's what they are trying to take out from Gaza, because we're hearing from the media, and unfortunately, whenever rumors start to circulate in the Hebrew media, and especially as they are doing now, later on, we'll see that, yes, it's happening on the ground. And what's circulating now is that the Israelis want to take northern Gaza from the Zarin corridor to the north, and they are now starting to talk that they want to create new settlements. And even they made like a conference to say how they should look, what we should name them, and which group should start to settle there. And they are encouraging the people, and they are saying, people, if you love Israel and you want Israel persistence, you have to sacrifice and go make new settlements in northern Gaza. So that's what's happening nowadays. And of course, any family without education and without health, they can't survive in any city in the world. So that's what we are witnessing now.
Yeah, like there's also Gaza's offshore gas, that might play into all of this for a future project. People who want to do like Jared Kushner's real estate beachfront, and then you have the people who want to, you have Israel that had previously set its sights on Gaza's offshore gas, and let's turn Gaza into a Dubai, let's turn Gaza into a Singapore. So, there's a law going around about, do they want to resettle it because they believe it's land exclusively for Jews? Or do they want to keep the Palestinians there, but have them live under, under their control, basically, with a completely different administration? I mean, all I know is it's an ethnic cleansing campaign and an attempted liquidation of the Palestinian identity and cause.
And last point is that prior to October 7, people should always remember that there were Israelis and settlements inside the Gaza Strip, and they were kicked out by Hamas in 2005. And of course, as we know how the Israelis think, they still have they want a revenge, not only from October 7, but also what happened in 2005, and they are calling people to go back to Gaza as they were before.
Yeah, it's a deep wound for them. The fact that they had to leave their settlements in Gaza is a very deep wound for them, and it's actually traumatizing for them. Because, for them, every inch of the land is theirs. So
yeah, and
they're an easily traumatized people.
Yes,
that's also what it is.
Yeah, and also there's facts that happened in 2005 that the government, when they asked the settlers to go out of Gaza, many people refused, and by force of the Israeli army, they were kicked out. Yeah, people are going because maybe people from our viewers will say, no, who will go or who will dare to go to Gaza under these situations? But no, people used to live there, and they were being targeted by the Palestinian resistance and also by the Israeli army. Just go out, and there's videos online show that Israelis are kicking another Israelis, and khalas, we have to go out, and they didn't. So we'll see what will happen.
Yeah, so all of this and the resistance operations are ongoing against the Israelis in northern Gaza. Just today, the Israeli military announced 4 killed in Jabalia, actually, I think, in northern Gaza, but I think it was Jabalia specifically. That's just today, which leads us to also the injuries that we're seeing, the injuries and deaths we're seeing among Israeli soldiers in South Lebanon. I mean, the numbers have really shot up. If you compare the number of injured prior to Israel's incursion into southern Lebanon, and now it's gone from like 20, 30 a day to almost 100 a day. It's crazy. It's crazy, and they're still trying to infiltrate Sirte. I saw very fierce clashes in Khiam, in the border town of Khiam.
Most of the villages that they're trying to enter, they are either between 300 or 2 or 4 kilometers away from the border, which is insignificant for an army who was preparing for this since 1 year. And of course, everybody is behind them, including the West, including the United States, of course, the Europeans, all the intelligence in the world, the Gulf countries, and the people that are against Hezbollah in Lebanon. And the fighters on the borders are fighting, I can say humbly that they are fighting the world currently. Until now, Israel only is trying to penetrate around a few hundred meters, and all the things that we saw is that the Israeli army, under the firepower of their airplanes, were able to penetrate, take photos, implement explosive, just to show that the world, and especially the Lebanese, that we are here and we are destroying our villages. And after they take these photos, they go back to where they are. And the evidence of what I am saying, despite the statements released by the resistance and people that live there, is that till now, Israel and South Lebanon, they couldn't establish any outpost or any building. They couldn't capture any building, and they are not stationed there at all now. Till now, soldiers go on and go out. And as we saw on the video that we're watching now, Hezbollah targeted a bunker where the Israeli soldiers wait when the buses come, so they can, when the shift turn.
Yeah, like switch.
Yeah. So when they switch turns, and they targeted the bunker. So till now, they are using buses on the borders just to switch between the soldiers.
And there's helicopters too.
Yeah, of course, helicopters.
But yeah, it's a very important idea that, I think, you mentioned, which is they haven't established any command and control or any kind of, they haven't taken over any building and turned it into an operation.
Guys, that at this point we're approaching the 1 month mark, right? Because it started on October 1st, the ground invasion plan.
Correct.
And the whole ground invasion idea was going to be limited. It was going to be short term. It was going to be, we're not going to occupy the south of Lebanon. Wink, I guess, given the situation that we're seeing in Gaza. But it's kind of a bit of their come to Jesus moment at this point, right, for the Israeli army. Because, as you guys are saying, on the ground, their achievements have been minimal. They have not been able. How have they secured the safe return of settlers, for example, to the north?
No, they haven't.
Their cities are getting attacked more often, and as you were saying, the casualties are mounting for an army that is not designed that is not built to fight a long war. Is only supposed to be a shock troop, and obviously very good at killing civilians, killing women and children. Nobody can beat them. Killing actual, trained soldiers, not so good at it.
Yeah, no, I mean, before letting you continue, I just wanted to say that the achievement is destruction. It's making the South uninhabitable to turn it into a buffer zone. Again, the reasons are up for debate. Is it to occupy it? Is it just to, bring, anyway. So making it uninhabitable completely with this scorched earth policy and detonating villages and homes as they are. This is the achievement. But as you said, it's been 1 month. And it's been, even the Israeli Ministry of Defense, that in the Rehabilitation Administration itself, has admitted to 910 soldiers injured in 1 month. Now the deaths, the Hezbollah operations room yesterday said above 90. Of course, Israel admits to less. So you're seeing all this destruction, and you're seeing so many injured after injured after injured. And I don't know if you recall, a couple of days ago, they were like, oh, we'll be done in a week. Oh, it's nearing its end because we defeated all the leaders, so the front will close it soon. Or, oh, in 2 weeks, we'll be able to come out of South Lebanon. We're almost done. And then yesterday, again, the Prime Minister, Netanyahu, says, no, we're not done. He says, no, there's no going back and we have to continue. So they're taking very heavy, very, very heavy losses. And I think as the days go by, we will see how this will start to affect the political, scene when it comes to negotiations and concessions. But for now, yeah, they're just losing soldiers, and of course not admitting to most of them. But the losses are very big.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to say. But I want to add also that what happened is that 2 days ago, also Hezbollah released a statement saying that there is 25 settlements that will be systematically targeted by Hezbollah, and they will make them uninhabitable. This also contradicts why the Israeli army started this operation at the first place. And we know that Israel, as I said, everybody is behind Israel, and they are supporting it. And Hezbollah, they are alone, and of course they took huge damages. From the pager, from all the assassination, including that of the Secretary General of Hezbollah, and also we saw, to be honest, we saw like depots of missiles, maybe long-range missiles were hit also in Bekaa, so they were affected in every single way, Hezbollah, but the fighters on the ground, they were not affected. They were already on the border, and they are well-trained. They fought in Iraq, they fought in Syria for years, and some also fought into the 2006 war. So on the ground, Israel can't do anything, but of course, it did damages to the military abilities of Hezbollah to target the depth of Israel, because now we didn't see this. There were, of course, damages to their long-range missiles and to ballistic missiles. But I think the most important strategic mistake that Israel did, at least in this decade, is launching a ground operation again against Hezbollah. They thought that they killed all these three leaders. Now we can enter. They thought that we destroyed their long-range missiles. Now we can enter Lebanon, but they can't enter Lebanon. And I said it from day one. Before even they entered, I said, and I took to Sima and told her, yeah, the damage is huge. The only thing that will make Hezbollah stand on their legs and show their supporters that they are resistance if Israel remain at stake and declare that they will invade Lebanon, and that's what's happening.
So actually, if the Israeli withdraws now, then they will resort back to just their superior firepower, and that's not in the Lebanese resistance's interest. So it is in the Lebanese resistance's interest for Israel to stay in the south and continue its attempted incursions. And this is also the Israelis are coming out with a lot of propaganda saying that Hezbollah is beginning to crack, and that since the beginning of ground operations, the Jerusalem Post and others reported this, Hezbollah terrorists have begun abandoning their posts and fleeing to Syria. They're supposedly fleeing from the border. If they're fleeing from the border, then how aren't you able to advance? I don't understand that. I mean, at least when you put out propaganda, let it, it has to align with what's actually happening on the ground for it for it to be convincing. I mean, it's not possible that they fled from the border. And we heard this before when they took someone from the south as prisoner and forced him to say that the Radwan elite force all fled from the border because they don't have any faith or conviction. They're just in it for the money. It's like, then who are you fighting? Why aren't you able to advance then? If they left their posts and they all fled to Syria?
Because this is their declared goal, is to send people back to their house in the north. So if they can't do it on the ground, they have to inject this propaganda.
Right.
And I just want to say that nobody is fleeing from Hezbollah. We know really how Hezbollah members operate and their mentality. And if you watch the Lebanese media, We saw doctors, we saw computer engineers, we saw lawyers fighting inside their villages. And these people, they are well paid, they are well educated, and they are fighting with Hezbollah for free. People don't know that there's doctors who are still fighting with Hezbollah without any return, just because these are their villages. People don't understand that. Maybe the West forgot that the human nations like this, maybe they had like 2 or 3 generations without wars. They do wars out of their borders for their interest. But when you fight for your country and for your homeland and for your memories and for your village and for the house of your village, that might be for you. You took it from your grandfather and your father took it from his also grandfather. You will fight till death. So that's currently what's happening. So anytime you hear Hezbollah are saying they will never flee unless the commander of this group tells them you have to retreat, let the Israelis come in, we'll see what we'll do. Maybe there's like an ambush. That's when they retreat. They will never retreat. And these people are trained to enter Israel, so how they can retreat within the Lebanese border? That's stupidity and propaganda. Also, although I have to give them credit, Israel, they know how to do propaganda alongside with the United States. They are like the father of propaganda. They own everything. Yeah, they own propaganda.
They own Hollywood.
Yeah, they own Hollywood.
That's anti-Semitic.
Sorry, they don't own anything.
I'm sorry. I thought you guys were Semites. I thought Arabs were also Semites.
No, apparently not.
The Jews are descended of the Semite people. In any case.
No, yeah, I just wanted to say, like, to build on Karim's point, exactly. They're not in this for the money, for you to even assert that they have now fled because the situation isn't good. These are people with PhDs. They're philosophy teachers, math teachers, engineers. They're fighting because of, it's a spirit that drives that. This is not all
the colonizing mind is never really going to understand what it means to have roots, what it means to be, rooted in a place, to have a culture, a heritage, a long-standing, not just a shopping and spending and Taylor Swift. You know what I mean? Like there's never going to be that connection, sadly. And Israel is part of the West. Israel pretends to be, like they are the Semites, they are the natives, they are the promised people, the chosen ones, the whatever. But they are part of the West, This is why they call themselves the only liberal democracy, the only democracy in West Asia, etc., because to them this is a democracy, right? Apartheid, colonization, dispossession, genocide is part of what is supposed to be a democracy. About Hezbollah, I just want to bring something up quickly, is that on top of everything, that you guys have just gone over, today the group announced the new Secretary General, which is Naim Qassem, the Deputy Secretary General for the late Hassan Nasrallah. He has been given the post, a long-term leader within the Lebanese resistance, kind of like the expected choice as well, especially given the fact that so many assassinations of the others, including Hassan Nasrallah's cousin, Safi, who was confirmed killed a few days ago, the expected person that was, that would have taken over for Nasrallah, was killed. Now Qassem is the new Secretary General, and as expected, like clockwork, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant on Twitter says, temporary appointment, not for long. Implying what? Implying we're going to kill him, like we've been killing everyone, because another thing about the colonizing mind, about Israel, is if we kill the leaders, the movement's going to dissolve. We've seen that, time and again with Hamas, with even the attempts, in Yemen, when the U.S. dropped these bunker busters bombs in Hodeidah, if I'm not mistaken, reports saying that they were trying to get at one of the leaders, maybe even Abdul Malik al-Houthi, because this is the idea, right? You cut off the head of the snake. But Hezbollah and Hamas have proven that this doesn't work, as has any, indigenous liberation movement through history, right? But we still have to wait and see what's actually going to happen, because I think what you guys are saying is also completely spot on about it's not beneficial for Hezbollah, for Israel to pull back from the south, because if there's one thing that the resistance in the region cannot really fight back against, is the superior air power, funded by the U.S., provided with all the weapons by the U.S. government.
The Israeli government's Arabic language account on X also threatened Naim Qassem, saying that his tenure may be short if he follows in the footsteps of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and Safiuddin. And, of course, called again for Hezbollah to disarm. I mean, all I'm going to say is I hope that Naim Qassem is not in Lebanon, but that's not for me to decide, and I don't know what the case is with that. Obviously, again, resistance will not cease to exist if they want to carry on with their assassinations, if they're able to carry on with their assassinations. And yeah, I mean, we're also seeing, massacres in Lebanon right now, which, as you said, it's this testament to this superior firepower. We're seeing the ancient city of Tyre, which we call Sur, being, destroyed by airstrikes. It's a very difficult site. We're seeing in East Lebanon in Baalbek. Yesterday in the Ba'an and Baalbek, it's now over maybe 70 killed in one day. And I always feel like Eastern Lebanon is underreported compared to Southern Lebanon. I don't know, Karim, what are they hitting there? I mean, what are they hitting? They already destroyed the border crossing with Syria. What are they hitting there?
And Sima said around 70, because till now, after 24 hours, we don't know how many were killed, because whenever a bulldozer or a truck comes to remove the rubble, they are being targeted by Israeli drones, and they are bombing the roads, so nobody knows what happened exactly there. And the Bekaa usually is not like other cities in Lebanon. The Bekaa, although Lebanon is a very small country, but the population density there is not high enough, so people don't really know what's happening. I mean, in Bekaa, there's villages that you might see only 10 houses there, and maybe 2 houses or 1 house has families inside, so it's very difficult to know what's really happening there. And as Sima said, it's underreported because all the concentration on the south, because what happened in 2006 is literally what's happening now, but plus the Bekaa. We had, of course, they tried to invade Lebanon, and they failed, and they destroyed many villages on the border, and they destroyed Dahi, and especially Har Tahrir completely. But in Bekaa, they had they tried to bomb it twice or 3 times only. So now Bekaa, and many people, including people that I know, when this started, they went to Bekaa because they thought that Bekaa is a safe place. Because in 2006, and prior to the Lebanese war, Bekaa usually was not a place for a battle. But currently it is, and it's being bombed. So I think this was a mistake done by the Israeli army, maybe because they thought that they already destroyed Hezbollah, and the battle will take only 1 week or 2 weeks. 1 week or 2 weeks. So what they are doing now is they are targeting civilian areas, just because there are people there that support the resistance. So that's what they actually are doing, because on the first 10 days of the operation, they targeted everything they can target.
Exactly. But it's the same strategy of what Sima was saying in Sur, right? Because the city of Sur, one of the most beautiful places I have ever visited, they're destroying the historic center, like an area that has stood for thousands of years. The entire city of Sur is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So, just to quickly go back to the idea of the evidence that South Africa presented yesterday at the ICJ, what they're doing in Lebanon, Israel, it's criminal to so many degrees. War crimes, violation of just the violations extend across country borders, including the assassinations, including everything you're describing, Karim. In the Bekaa as well. The Bekaa also home to one UNESCO site.
Yeah, and it's not home of one of UNESCO site. And Bekaa, there is the biggest Roman building that is standing in the whole world. Baalbek.
The biggest outside of Rome, right?
Yeah, the biggest. So what they are doing is that what they are doing since tons and tons of years. If not Israel, we had ISIS. If not ISIS, we had other terrorist groups that were created and funded and because for instance, what happened in Tadmor. In Tadmor, the United States they have the Tanaf, which is somehow near Tadmor, and they don't allow anybody to pass there of a radius of 50 kilometers. But we saw people from ISIS came and destroyed Tadmor.
Palmyra in English.
Palmyra, which was also one of the biggest standing cities of the ancient world, and they did the same in Aleppo. So they always target this, and now they are doing it personally in Lebanon because their allies didn't succeed. If I put myself in their shoes as an Israeli, I will target Tyre because it's a beautiful city, and I want to show the people that Lebanon is like a third world country, and we are the superiors, we are the whiteys, we are the only democratic country in the world, we are the only people who can make roads and buildings. These are like animals, and we have the right to take their beautiful land and turn it out to a more beautiful, modern land. That's what I think. This is the only thing that the Westerns see, and the average guy, that's what he sees if he's not interested enough in the region.
Exactly. It's the dehumanization of the Arab population, you know, not just the Palestinians now at this point, the Lebanese and anyone else. So that's the idea, you know, is what I was speaking to earlier, that this is the mindset of a Western, you know, colonizer mind. And the destruction of these ancient sites, it's, I mean, obviously, you know, not more important than the loss of life or the loss of infrastructure, etc. But it just adds, you know, to the criminality, to the depravity, to just, you know, like the evil of these people.
Well, I think destroying such buildings is more important than, like, I don't know how to say, but that, yani, I feel sorrow more on destroying these buildings because our roots are these buildings. Yeah, we are proud of these buildings. You know what I mean? Yeah, the guy who was fighting in the south, he's fighting because he loves his village. He wants to defend it. You know what I mean?
So another thing that made all the headlines over the past week was the Israeli attack against Iran, what the West calls the retaliatory attack, right? The retaliation to the retaliation. Because let's not forget, the Iranian attack on October the 1st was an actual retaliatory attack for the bombing of their capital. Now Israel is an escalatory attack, right? It's an escalation to the war, seeking to expand it, as we have seen from the beginning of this crisis that is gripping West Asia, which is let's try to drag Iran into the war, let's try to drag the U.S., let's have an all-out, the war to end all wars, I guess. Israel launches it earlier Saturday, hits several Iranian military sites, Iranian air defenses activated in Tehran. A pretty significant attack, although information has not been, you know, released to really, you know, or at the very least, we haven't seen the videos that we saw. Remember on October the 1st, when Telegram was alight with all of the strikes from the Iranian attack. This time we didn't see that, but we do know that several important military sites were hit. Iranians are saying Israel launched as many as 600 missiles. Some of the planes were flying over Jordanian airspace. Over Iraqi airspace. Now there's a big thing going on there because Israeli jets flying over Iraqi airspace to attack Iran without permission, reportedly from Baghdad, just given permission by the United States, who, on top of controlling Iraq's oil revenues, also controls parts of its airspace. Now, Iran has promised a retaliation, has promised a response. So, the snowball just keeps rolling downhill. And Israel, it seems to almost be getting what it wished for, which is war with Iran.
Well, the thing is, Iran, it's not even retaliating to the attack, of course, because Israel's is not a retaliation, is not taking the bait. It's literally operating within international law. So, you know, Iran can't not respond. I mean, one thing I want to say is that I'm very against trivializing what the enemy does or downplaying it. And even the supreme leader said, although it shouldn't be exaggerated, it shouldn't be downplayed. As someone who supports the regional axis of resistance, I have a big problem with these axis of resistance cultists who make memes out of everything the Israelis do and downplay it. And that's why when something actually terrible happens, they're all shocked because they just spend all their time in an echo chamber convincing themselves that the Israelis are incapable. Just because Israel is fragile doesn't mean it's incapable. So my point being, this is a very big operation, regardless of whether Iran intercepted most of the missiles or not, regardless of whether they entered Iranian airspace or hit from Iraqi airspace. The damage is up for debate. Iran admitted to the damage. We don't know the extent of the damage. The satellite imagery that has come out doesn't show anything clear enough to me. I was talking about that with Kanim the other day, but the point is, like you said, 600 missiles targeting across 3 provinces, 20 different targets. The response should be bigger than the Iranian response we saw on October 1st, because that was just targeting the guest house that Ismail Haniyeh was in, that first attack. This was a much bigger scale attack. So yes, regardless of how well the air defenses performed, or, of how how damaged the radar systems were, or what buildings were damaged and to what extent, it doesn't change the fact that Iran has to show Israel that bombing Iran cannot be normalized. And another thing is, I was also talking about this yesterday in an interview, but public perception is very important. And we saw that, the Iranians were asleep in their beds, and the Israeli settlers were pissed that they have to run down to shelters every time. And the same thing didn't happen with Iran. They weren't given this great big reward, this instant gratification of this huge explosion. They couldn't see anything. They weren't given anything tangible, the settlers. And it made them very angry because, remember when Israel bombed Hodeidah port in Yemen, we saw this massive explosion? That was look what we did in Yemen. Anyone who messes with us, this is, the destruction that we will wreak on them. With Iran, there was none of that. The settlers were given nothing. And they were very outraged that Iranians can be in their beds while this happened, and that they have to rush to shelters whenever they're attacked. So it wasn't even just angry settlers. Even Yair Lapid, the opposition leader, called it a weak attack. And the fanatic Ben Gvir said, this is just an opening blow, like a prelude. It's good if it's like an intro. We have to hit again to hit their strategic depth. And then again, yesterday, I was seeing channel maybe 13, Hebrew, was saying, we also have to respond to the drone attack on Netanyahu's house, because they're still claiming Iran did that, even though Hezbollah claimed responsibility for it. So now it's we're not, this was just the beginning. We're just showing, what we can do. And we might have to also separately respond to that drone attack, and we might have to do this and that. So the thing is, Iran has to respond harsher than it did on October 1st. Because this was a bigger attack. Even if you didn't see impact on video, it doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
They intended to destroy many things in Iran. And if it wasn't that successful, that doesn't mean that you should not reply or retaliate against this. For instance, if somebody tried to kill me, if he was unsuccessful, I would go after him. And because he tried to, you know what I mean? That's exactly what happened.
That is self-defense.
Yeah, and I want also to add, despite, regardless of the attack, also Iran should retaliate in a very fierce and powerful way because of what's happening in Lebanon. So they should target stuff or target bases that will affect the war on Lebanon, that will help Hezbollah to furthermore stand up on their feet, because I think they also need time. You know what I mean?
Because the attacks have been intense.
Yes, it's so intense.
Month and a half.
It's so intense, and they are using bombs. Made in the US bombs. They are crazy. And I've been watching the Ukraine Russia war. There's nothing like this. And we haven't seen destruction or one bomb that can do all this destruction coming out of our airplane. Although Russians are using ballistic missiles from time to time, we don't see such a destruction. So I think Iran should retaliate in a way that will also help Hezbollah and the resistance in the region, not only just our show off, because this is now we entered, I think, at the phase of existence. And either you exist or I exist. Either you lose or I lose. It's not like the war that's happening for us in Ukraine. In Ukraine, we know, okay, maybe Russia will gain Crimea or other places, Crimea, yeah. In Arabic, we say Al-Qurum, and I think it's the correct name. So you can think about the end game in this war, you know what I mean? And then Azerbaijan and Armenia It was a short war, and many people can predict what might happen. But this war, nobody can predict. Everybody is saying that this war will lead into either the collapse of Israel or Israel ruling the area for the next 100 years. So it's very, very essential, this war.
The new Middle East, the curse and the blessing, right?
Exactly. And, waiting for Iran's response, I mean, we have no details on what it would look like, but I think we're sure that it's going to take place. We know that last time Iran waited 2 months to respond to the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh because it was trying to, achieve a ceasefire. And it once again gave this chance to the U.S. I think that's what I understood. I mean, they said that themselves, that, they wanted to leverage their potential response in order to achieve, we won't respond if you end the war on Gaza. And of course that didn't work, because when the enemy doesn't want a ceasefire, it means the enemy doesn't want a ceasefire. So I hope that Iran realizes this time that that's not going to work out, and that, the response should come sooner than 2 months. And what Karim said about this should, supporting Gaza and Lebanon, that point also was in a way made by Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister. He said that this aggression on Iran cannot be separated from the genocide in Gaza or the bloodshed in Lebanon. And so really, it's down to, for me, I think that this is the only way to push Israel farther towards making concessions, not just the losses it's taking in South Lebanon, but if it's militarily hurt enough by Iran, this could also push it, perhaps, to make more concessions. But you'd have to start to debilitate Israel militarily, not just, target. And anyway, Iran is going to target military targets. It's not going to hit, the
hospital.
Hospitals or schools or the Knesset. So in terms of Iran's taking the bait. No, Iran's not taking the bait. Iran's operating within international law, and it has to be a strong response.
And they are capable, They are capable. They are not like other countries that are incapable. You know what I mean? People are asking them to retaliate because they are capable. And we saw that when they want to target a facility, they are able to target it. So despite that, there are states gave Israel a third battery, and now they are talking about another third battery of 100 soldiers. I don't think any defense mechanism can shoot down such missiles, or if they can increase the percentage of the missiles that were down. But whatever they they can do it, so they should do it.
Something interesting that came out, just worth a mention, today, the Wall Street Journal reporting that apparently the U.S. is facing a bit of a shortage of interceptor missiles because of, what's happening mainly with Israel, right, where they need to protect it at all costs. Now, obviously, you take this with a grain of salt, because a lot of the times these reports about, the U.S. defense industry is struggling to develop more bombs, they are more likely than not just attempts at normalizing the idea that the defense budget needs to keep ballooning, right? You need to keep the arms manufacturers happy. The only people in the world truly benefiting from what's happening, from the death of our friends, of our family, of these horrific massacres, both in Gaza and as well as in Lebanon, and who knows, soon enough, between Iran as well. So I think we can wrap it up here for this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. For our Patreon members, make sure to to go to our Patreon page, where you can find an extended version of the podcast, in which we will also discuss a recent excerpt from a book by U.S. journalist Bob Woodward, in which he talks about Arab leaders telling the U.S. State Secretary in the aftermath of October 7 that they want Israel to completely eradicate Hamas. And what does that mean? So for that, go to our Patreon, become a member, support our work. For the Cradle News Roundup, my name is Esteban Carrillo. I have been joined by Sima Itayim and Karim Shan.